Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Solar Energy Storage Solutions, the latest in battery and backup tech. We have a great lineup of panelists and moderator and questions. I'm Rebecca Taylor, Head of Marketing at Enerflo, and just really appreciate everyone joining today. So let me quickly introduce our moderator and our panelists. We have Lily Valdez, CEO of Sun Lily Energy and founder of Women United by Solar. For our panelists, we have Brady Hogan, Chief Revenue Officer at Lion Energy, Brian Kim, Director of Strategic Channel Marketing and Partnerships at QCells, Chris Young, Senior Director of Storage and System Innovation at Enphase, Ido Gianotti, Chief Product Officer at Solar Edge, and Everett Brewer, Co-founder and CEO at Stores Power. And with that, I will hand it over to Lily to get us started.
Hey, good morning, everyone, depending on where you're at. I want to say thank you first to Enerflo for putting together such great value for the solar community. As we've seen the landscape change so much in the last year, this is more and more important. And I'm very honored to be among these gentlemen who are all innovative thought leaders and leading the way for storage, which is the next huge thing in solar. So thank you for having me. I'm going to have some questions. I'm going to ask them to each of you, and then we'll open it up to the rest if you have any more insights to share. So I'll start with Everett. The role of battery storage evolving in Resi, especially as it relates to being paired with solar projects.
Yeah, ultimately, it's a very dynamic industry that we live in right now. I think right now what we're also starting to see is we're catching up to the rest of the overseas markets, right? Look at Europe, or look at Australia, where they're 15, 20 years ahead, to where that interconnectivity is a really big, important piece within it. So as we're starting to see different grid services programs, as we start seeing that the utility companies are making decisions, helping evolve the decision-making from an economic standpoint on behalf of a homeowner looking at residential storage, ultimately it comes down to how can this actually operate in a homogeneous position, where the battery is not only just a net incentive for the end consumer, but it's also a net incentive for the actually utility company as well. And so we're starting to see a lot of involvement there. And so being on some of the policy side of the industry right now, we're seeing a lot more of those pop-up requests and also case studies where the utility companies are saying, hey, it's no longer these large commercial assets we're willing to go ahead and interconnect with. We're really wanting to make sure that the homeowner feels like they're part of the overall infrastructure and target goals here. And that's some of the things that we're seeing the biggest involving in at our current point for my purview.
Thank you. Absolutely. And that was actually my second question. So you answered it. Like, where do you see that we are ahead or behind? So we're catching up, right? That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Brady, did you want to add anything to where you see this going?
Yeah, I think generally Everett did a great job that we're playing a little bit of catch up. But I think in the past, as you look at the solar industry, there's been this large focus on just the net effect with net metering over the course of a year, right? And the utilities have consistently complained about trying to match up the production when it's highlighted or largest on the solar production side versus aligning that with where their demand and peak demand lies. And our catching up, or a lot of that movement, is creating better alignment around allowing the storage to help solve for some of that problem, where that solar production can be more aligned when the demand is occurring and make it easier to manage that supply and demand relationship on the infrastructure that they've built out and are trying to maintain and manage. I think for the solar industry as a whole, where the focus has been on just managing kind of the annual net effect of you've produced this amount of solar and you consume this much power. And so this is the net effect with a 100 or 120% offset solar system. Really, it's saying, okay, we're going to create alignment of that production with your demand and make it easier for the utility company to be able to manage that as well with their infrastructure.
Absolutely, I agree. The grid is so old, they can't maintain everything. So we're helping now with storage, right? Did you want to add anything? Anybody else? Brian, Chris, Dave, Ido?
Yeah, I would say in terms, I mean, the question is about evolution, and historically, the challenge has been resiliency, especially in the aging infrastructure that we have. And so I think certainly it's recognized that batteries provide that. And what's just restate what we've said is we're evolving from simply providing or addressing the resilience to finding a better ROI on these systems that not only provide resilience, but ways to reduce the cost to the homeowner in terms of the energy that they provide. As mentioned, we're in the U.S. catching up with what they're doing in Europe. Europe has a challenge of high energy costs, and the U.S. is scattered. I'm in Texas, and we have a lower energy cost than other parts. Texas, we lag a little bit because the energy costs are lower. Nonetheless, we still have a resiliency issue that we have to deal with from time to time. So I think that's where the industry is evolving from resilience and maintaining that resilience capability, and then evolving into something that actually reduces costs for homeowners.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Sure.
I'll get it started with this.
Lily, can I also make a comment on that? In addition to what Chris and Brady also shared, is that if you look at our utility infrastructure, they were built decades ago when the population of the U.S. was much smaller. So it's really designed to fit that smaller population. And I think in the last several decades, what's also has going on is the global warming. So as a result of global warming, you have a lot more power outages, something that we didn't have to deal with many decades ago, right? And so when you have a lot of power outages, you need to upgrade your infrastructure and so forth. And as such, those sort of a default infrastructure is not really keeping up with the higher population, with a global warming, which results in a power outage and so forth. And as such, you have evolution of different technology that's going on with that. That's whether it's solar or wind and battery in this such case. And so battery has made strides in technologies, and they're available in both commercial as well as residential. And it gives you an option to actually use that system to store that energy. And there's a shift in paradigm as to how we distribute our electricity. It used to be centralized to residential homeowners having that independence.
Absolutely. Those are such valid points, and they take us right into our next question. So thank you for that, Brian. We'll go with Dave. Let's see. What are the main roadblocks? First of all, hi. This is going to be for where a lot of residential reps are on this webinar, a lot of sales orgs. And this is like how it pertains to the residential part of solar. So what are the main roadblocks that reps run into when they're trying to help homeowners understand the value? Like, we all understand this, but cost, benefits, savings, etc., of adding storage to their solar systems. How does the fact that the customer could change their battery use or consumption habits after install complicate this even more? I think we can, I don't know if he's frozen. We can go to Dave or Ito, whoever wants to take this one. We haven't heard
I
from you.
think Lily, Dave's with Enerflo, so I think he's just
Okay.
monitoring the background. So
Yeah, correct.
Ito.
Let's go to Ito. Ito, how would you say that this affects the reps as far as roadblocks when they're trying to help homeowners understand the value of adding storage and increasing their costs?
So thanks for the question, Lily. That's a great question. And in fact, it complicates everything a bit because we all got very used to selling solar. All of our pitch were tuned to selling solar. But in fact, and maybe alluding to the previous question, storage is probably the most important thing that happened to our industry. We've been building such immense stacks of technology, both behind the meter optimization and front of the meter integration, to the point that we can bring a lot of value to homeowners and to the grid as a whole. Also decoupling and allowing the usage of flexibility, which is available in households towards the better use of the grid. But it makes the discussion a bit more complex because you have to explain more intricate concepts, and you need to make forward-looking statements on what will be the benefits that will be derived from the system. So definitely it creates some friction for reps at the kitchen table when they pitch. We are, as an industry, all of us, trying to really facilitate the discussion. That means that we are developing proposal tools to simulate the benefits. We are developing, and in fact, in SolarEdge, we developed state-specific and market-specific training modules to allow the reps to ease into the discussion and really bring it or boil it down to specific messages that we tested and we believe that can resonate with homeowners. So friction, yes, but the overall value and the ability to drive even larger sales is definitely in there.
Absolutely, I agree. Great answer. Chris, would you like to share anything?
Sure. In terms of roadblocks, as an engineer, we tend to think in terms of watts. In fact, if you're installing solar, that's what you think in terms of watts. But when you introduce solar, when you introduce storage, now you're thinking of watt hours or kilowatt hours as well as watts. When I talk to my neighbor, he doesn't know a watt really from an ohm. So if we have to speak in a different language then for the average homeowner to understand really the value this brings. And of course, all homeowners will understand the value of cost. And so you have to translate it into that. What is the real savings? And it's really specific to the homeowner. So as Ido mentioned, it really comes down to a conversation with the homeowner about what they will really save with the storage installation. And so, I think all of us are developing, ways to rapidly come to that conclusion in front of the homeowner. Enphase has a set of software tools that incorporates artificial intelligence, as you might imagine, to rapidly not only understand the usage historically, but to project that into the future. You talked about how do you deal with changes coming along. That's part of the things that we're looking at in terms of the artificial intelligence and what can that bring. How do people's usage evolve over time so we can project that for the homeowner and say, look, build your system for where you want it to be, rather than where it's been in the past. So
I love that. That is so true, Chris. A lot of the times I'm in California, so we have a hard time with people that got a quote 2 years ago or a year ago because the price went up substantially with storage included. Add to that dealer fee, just a lot of things went up, right? So being able to educate them and show them the scenarios, and it's not just backup, it's the quality of life, and really painting the picture of you're going to use more energy and you're not going to sell it back to the grid for pennies. You're going to be able to use your own and things. That's a great thing at the table. Like now we're not selling savings, we're selling quality of life, some savings, and energy independence. So that I do like that the way that the proposal tools are starting to align with that, and the manufacturers are starting to help us because we only have the tools that everyone gives us. So I love that answer. Does anyone want to add anything else?
Yeah, I'll add couple comments, and you mentioned you live in California. I would also add that a few years ago, it's all about savings, about electricity and so forth. I think it's been more amplified or enhanced in terms of value proposition. I want to include lifestyle, especially in California, the lifestyle being that the adoptions, lately, in California, you see EVs and Teslas everywhere, right? Because of the condition we live in. We have plenty of sunshine and so forth. At least in California, the lifestyle, especially with the high EV adoptions, then there are a number of homeowners who purchase EVs and use solar and battery system to charge at home. And that's more of a convenience. It's that lifestyle. You're making a statement, and you don't want to go to Tesla supercharger where sometimes you end up waiting, spend at least an hour or more. Right. And so there's a convenience, there's a change in your lifestyle as well. The other second thing that I would add is that if you look at the utility rates every year, it's been increasing in double digits. All right, especially in California, the last 3 years or so, they've increased to more than 30%. So on average, they've been increasing 10%. And talk about inflation, utilities has got one of the highest inflation. It's not going backwards. They're not going to decrease that, and more so in California. And so we have to assume that there's going to continuous increase in utility rates, and you have to factor that in, and you have to extrapolate over the past 5 to 10 years how much you're going to see that savings along with your lifestyle of EVs or convenience, and you have to put that in economic model or proposal tool.
Yeah, and if I can
points. Oh,
And if I can add too, is that a lot of people ask the question, is this more of a seller market or a buyer market? The reality of it is the buyers are literally approaching the sales opportunities here with these key questions. You've got to become subject matter experts. There is a definite big shift where a lot of people say is like California, there's 49 other states that we can't forget about. And the reality of it is that in most of the United States markets, there's not a savings mechanism at all. There's still one-to-one net metering. There still is an economic financial impact to their lifestyle. And at the end of the day, there's different purposes and reasons. You got to really understand the local market, understanding how that applies to their life, why they're making that request, because you need to be prepared for those questions because they're coming from the buyers. Whether you're showing up on the door, they're showing up to you. It doesn't really matter. And right now, the life-saving aspect of this is super crucial, right? We've got friends down in Texas that just went through that unfortunate event about 4 weeks ago. You've got people boarding up windows and doors in North Carolina. You've got the winter month considerations here. We just got hit with hail right here in Utah yesterday, which is a phenomenon that was not usual. And it really puts people in a position of, hey, how can I protect my home and my family? And there's not a price you can put on that. A lot of people talk about, one of the comments here is understanding the cost benefits, because to your point, Lily, you stated is from 2 years ago, the cost of that system has gone up. The reality of it is it actually hasn't, and how I look at that overall economic. Because in this scenario, what happens is that some people shy away from energy storage because they're worried about selling a bigger ticket item. But the reality of it is that's the mechanism of savings. These 5 and 10 kilowatt hour batteries don't cut it anymore. The demand, the overall consumption of a home, those conveniences, as Kim stated, these are the kind of things that we need to make sure that we're enabling through education and being able to slow the sell down, making sure that you're accounting for the proper timeline and making sure they have an educated purchase on their end of the sale, because these cancellation rates can drop, and that investment and turn accounts for your return on investment as a sales organization as well. So
you're 100% agree with that, Everett. Like I tell people, you have to sell how we sold solar 8 years ago. There was no savings. It was a bill swap. And we're just coming back to the same, but they're getting more value. They're still getting a battery. They're getting more security. We used to sell peace of mind and inflation proofing yourself. And that is literally what we're doing today. You're not like in Texas when nobody had power for days. I saw so many people post stuff on social media about, here's my battery still running 3 days. That's amazing. We couldn't say that 8 years ago when we started, unless you had a generator. There was no storage. There was no solution to these kind of things that we're seeing more often. So thank you for bringing that up. Great. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Lily, I'll chime in here if I can real quick.
Sure.
I think if you look back at the industry and the evolution with solar, we're talking about a group with the sales organizations and the reps in this industry that are extremely resilient, right? And they have the ability to learn this stuff. Many of our reps in our industry transitioned from what I would consider a simple sell, a transactional sell, whether that was in alarms or pest or satellite, and many of them transitioned into solar. And there was a big educational process for each of them to pass through of understanding what is this net metering thing, right? And what is this AC versus DC, and this whole educational process, and a more consultative sell of a 2 or 3 touch close instead of just a single touch close. Like it has evolved and changed immensely, and our reps in the industry are resilient and they have the ability to learn this. But I think everybody's really focused on this, and you're right that the pitch that has worked and that you've spent the last several years refining, and that you've benefited financially, significantly over the last several years, it's got to be adjusted, and it needs to move to that value-based type sell and focusing on the full benefit. And back to a point that Everett had made, as part of that sell, you're now facilitating the ability for the customer to capture the full benefit of the solar that they're producing, right? As we talk about buyback rates being cut back or reduced and shifting, and the different tactics the utilities are changing, really encouraging storage, the customer is able to capture the full savings available to them when combined with storage, right? And ensuring that it's sized properly. And we are seeing a lot of advancement with the sales tools that can help facilitate this and make it easier for sales reps. Enerflo recently launched their battery sizing tool, which is a great tool as part of that proposal tool to help simplify the process for the rep, but also help make it more simple for the customer to understand that it's just another piece of the equation of how the customer is benefiting from solar on their roof with combined with storage from a backup solution, but also maximizing the savings from the system that they're investing in on their home. And then that peace of mind and comfort when there is that outage or that event that occurs.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you for that, Brady. I agree completely. There's so much information that goes into it. And as sales reps, we have to become professionals at taking a bunch of information and condensing it down to what really matters to the homeowner and the value prop and just making that digestible. Because if we really told them everything we know, they'd have analysis paralysis because it's a lot of information. So it's up to us to use the tools that are being provided by manufacturers, proposal tools, platforms to basically make them see the future with how it is enhanced with the storage solution and not see it as a cost, to see it as a benefit. Wow, I'm lucky this wasn't available before. I actually use that in my pitch. I still sell solar and I tell them, your neighbors that all had solar like 4 or 5 years ago, it's great. They've had solar, but they probably don't have storage, which is really crucial and essential now, not just for the cost part, for the actual quality of life. We have rolling blackouts, we have natural disasters, things where they didn't have the ability to get storage. You really do, and they feel empowered by that. So as reps, it's up to us to convey that excitement and really get them like, oh yeah, that's great that I can get a battery. It's not, oh, I have to pay extra. Now it's, oh, you're lucky you get to get it. Other people, some of them can't even retrofit a battery. It's not available. So really, I agree 100% with that as far as how we need to position ourselves when we're selling these higher ticket items, more value, something that people didn't have before. I love it. I'll start with Brian for this one.
Do you have, I think I wanted to chime in here too.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I think you nailed the point on the head, and I just want to add, we discussed savings and we discussed resilience, but there are two other concepts that we found very useful in discussions with customers, and I want to throw them to the mix. First one is future readiness. That's a high ticket system, right? Installing solar, not to mention solar and storage, is a big decision for virtually every household. And we understand that, as Chris discussed before, a lot is changing. The tariffs are changing, incentive structure are changing. And then baking into the system storage component, and especially opting for systems that are extendable, to which you can add more battery or more PV modules in the future, allows you the peace of mind and taking some of the drama out of the decision, right? You are making a big decision today, but you're opting into a system that will allow you to grow as you need. If you consume more with EV, if you're going to electrify your heating or your air conditioning, taking some of the drama out of the decision. Another dimension that we found useful is discussing the concept of decoupling, right? There is a lot of havoc happening on the grid side. Consumption, production, incentives, things are changing. There are many opportunities that are currently under-tapped. Look at what happens with HVAC controls. There's many lucrative incentives out there for homeowners to allow their HVAC system to be controlled by the grids. The fact is, and this is one of the nasty little secrets of the industry, homeowners don't really like the concept of someone external to their home controlling their comfort at the home. Having storage into the system allows them to tap into that potential while decoupling what the grid wants and what they get. That allows the grid to control their net load while allowing themselves to maintain the comfort level, the lifestyle decisions that Everett discussed, just as they like. So savings, yes, resilience, yes, but also future readiness and decoupling what happens in the home from what happens on the grid side.
Great points. Thank you. So I think this question was answered so perfectly, and this is what the reps can take back to the table to close those deals. So I love it. Thank you all for sharing. We'll start with Brian for this one. With the comeback or rise of the third-party ownership, PPAs being so big right now, how does storage play into that? What do you think are some of the key considerations when attaching storage to a third-party ownership project? Do you have any insight on the attachment rates? Are they higher or lower than like on a loan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Ever since the elevated interest rate that started 18 months ago, right now, if you look at the overnight interest rate, it's between 5.0 to 5.25. Though, of course, I think in September, they're talking about whether it's going to go 25 points lower or 50 points lower. But irrespective of what the interest rate in the next few months or so, it's very clear that TPO has a reason in popularity because of the cost of financing or getting a loan is much higher now. If you look at the attachment rate over across the United States, so for instance, in California, prior to NEM 3.0, the attachment on battery was around hovering 20%. Now, under NEM 3.0, it's close to or over 50%. The latest number, I think it's May, is 53%. The Sunbelt states like in Nevada and Arizona, before the elevated interest rate, it hovered in the teens. And now, 18 months later, it's close to 50%. And then, of course, the Northeast region, which typically had very high battery attachment rates or TPO, I think it's close to 80% in New Jersey and some other parts of tri-states there. Clearly, the TPO high elevated interest rate had driven the popularity of the TPO. And some of the consideration, of course, is the cost of financing. And so with TPO, you don't have huge upfront costs. It's amortized over a certain period of 10 years or 20 years. So the fact that you don't have huge upfront costs, I think is one of the most attractive points. And I think that's really driving that. And if you look at the portfolio between loans and TPOs, now I believe TPO has surpassed that loans because of the elevated interest rate, right? And we're going to probably see that for the next several years because the interest rate will probably hover around between 3% to 5%, that range. And I think the TPO still makes it very attractive for homeowners and still be able to get that savings while they live there. So I think those are the things that homeowners will look at when they purchase or lease TPOs.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've got two comments to dovetail in this scenario. That one of the key questions here is, what does adoption look like in the TPO from the previous loan industry that we had before? And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that coming out of 2023, there's still this scarcity that is still following us into 24, despite the fact that we've actually had a maturity in the financing industry where the TPOs are now gone through maturity, dropped the allocation of loan transactions in the field. But we've really got to get out of that mindset. Don't be afraid to sit back after today and push reset and simply state as, what is that actual value proposition that we need to produce for the end net customer? Because right now, last year, guys were not getting sales because some of the loan products were actually offering a payment higher than the electric bill savings. And they were coming out of more or less the easy buttons through 20 to 2022, where we had this really high increase and hockey stick effect of where renewables were getting adopted. But don't be afraid of that extra $20, $30, $40 a month on the loan, on the lease or PPA payment, because there's value that is being brought there. Get out of that old position. There's many meetings that we have with these TPOs now where they're actually looking at a battery as an insurance policy long-term, even on their investment, because in that scenario, it allows that system to have more value to the end customer, which means that customer becomes stickier. They have more of a reason to keep that payment active and make that constant investment. You got markets like Arizona, Utah, Texas, California, Illinois, soon to be North Carolina, Tennessee, et cetera, where net metering is already challenged. And so that battery attachment is a way to make sure that they're seeing a net savings result or a net final benefit result in that position. And we really need to get out of that mindset. So the TPOs are highly incentivized for battery attachment because it's a secured asset for the long haul. And the homeowners need to actually have the understanding of that. And it's the sales rep's responsibility to get out of 2023. It's behind us and progress through what's available to us, because, man, it's prime. It's an incredible offering, and we need to take full advantage of that.
Thank you, Everett. We call that selling out of your own pocket, right? Because you don't
That's
see
right.
the value in $20 or $40 more a month doesn't mean your customer doesn't.
Right.
They might see great value in paying that for security. They pay that in one meal. So why
Yeah.
wouldn't they do that to like that extra to protect their home, to have energy? That's a great way to position it and a great point to make. Do you think that with the TPO offering, sometimes they're pushing it because of the warranties? And this isn't one of the questions, but I just thought of this because with the TPO, there is a 25-year warranty on everything. And when they're buying it, there's 10 to 12-year warranties. Do you think that affects the attachment rate, or does that kind of push people to a third-party ownership, or not really?
I'll jump in. I think it is making a difference there. Again, we all need to accept also the fact that those warranties are being priced in to the cost of it. Like they aren't just being added for free, like it's being incorporated into the economics. But I think, Lily, part of this goes back to, again, understanding what the customer wants and needs and what those goals are. There's some elements that I think we just need to understand. Ido made a great point that some of these products are also going to be trying to leverage virtual power plants or relationships with the utility where the customer doesn't have full control over that storage, even though it's been attached as part of their solution. So again, what is the long-term benefit, or what's the desired outcome that the customer wants? What is that value that they're looking for? And then align around that. If they want full control and they want to have the ability to use the storage combined with their solar array the way they want, the loan product might be the better solution. If they're okay with not having full control or don't know as though they'll be in the home long term, that TPO solution might be the better option for them. Again, it's going to be customized to the customer. And we made this point earlier, for the individual reps to understand their market dynamics, what's available in their market, and creating alignment around those customer needs and being focused on the value with it.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. So the last question, thank you all so far. It's been so insightful, even for me, just learning all these ways. So I guess we could go to Brian or Chris for this one. This one we've already touched upon. So its policy changes have been a big driver of attachment rates, like we saw in California. There are other markets where economic factors, not necessarily policy, have grown attachment rates, like Texas, places like that probably. Are we at a point where every resi installer needs to take batteries seriously, or is it still early where there are only specific markets where they should be added to every single deal? When do batteries become part of the default of designing the solar system that you're selling? And explain if you could explain a time when you wouldn't put a battery on a system.
Sure.
That's kind of a loaded question, but.
Okay. As an engineer in my career, one of the things I've learned is customers pay for solutions to problems. And so the way I look at this question is, what is the problem we're trying to solve for homeowners? That it really boils down to a concept called energy independence. Okay, we see that clearly in the idea of resilience, but we've talked about we're moving from resilience. But let's talk about what battery storage provides a homeowner that you don't get from solar. Okay, one of these things is the ability to provide high peak powers. If you designed your solar system to match the peak power requirement of the home, the cost would be prohibitive. And to not design solar systems to handle the peak, but along comes batteries, which can be installed and can be designed economically to provide the peak power demand of the household. So again, this helps you further along towards energy independence. The other thing that storage provides is time shifting. The interesting thing about solar is it only works when the sun shines. And so what are you going to do the rest of the time as you move towards energy independence? And that's what storage can bring. Time shifting of the availability of energy. And the third thing is home value increase. When you add storage, undoubtedly you increase the value of the home. So it's not only provides you a means of energy independence, but it increases the value of your home so that if you ever decide to sell, then you can get some return on your investment that way. Is there a time when you never need energy independence? I'm not sure of that. So I would think that there's not a time when you wouldn't want to install a battery for those reasons, a peak power demand, time shifting, and increasing the value of your home.
I love it. Great answer. Thank you for answering all three of those questions in one. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? And I think it was very thorough.
I think Chris covered all the right points. One thing that I'll add in addition to his comments is stability, grid stability. And I think in certain areas you will have frequent power outages as well. And I think this would fall under energy independence as well. But I think you want to bring some stability to your grid if you are relying on one centralized utility and it results in frequent power outages, then it's very unstable. And by having a battery where it stores your electricity and you can use it when there is a power outage. So I think the stability is another big factor, especially perhaps in California and other parts of the region where it has a lot of power outages as well. For California, I think it's now with a battery, you can actually monetize it, right? You could use demand response programs like VPP or SRAC. So now storage units is an opportunity to actually monetize and participate in those programs or virtual power plant and other incentive programs and be able to get some of your investment backs. And that really makes it a lot more attractive. Whereas up until now, battery is considered to be, as Chris said, energy independence, right? And grid resilience and stability. In addition to that, now you could resell your electricity back and get some credit or money for it. And I think that's a very powerful, and I think it will be only accelerate moving forward because of the instability to the grid.
Absolutely. And you bring up VPP. I think a lot of people don't know that. Can someone explain what the virtual power, what that VPP program is, where they can actually make money on their batteries? Whoever wants to explain that.
Nominating Everett.
That's you.
There you go.
Thanks, Brady.
Right.
Yeah,
I second that.
Yeah, so ultimately it's super dynamic. I'll keep it high level, but ultimately it's a way for a software platform to be able to connect to assets that are on the ground, commercial or residential. And in the case that there is an event where the utility needs some level of capacity or reduced load in any way, shape, or form on the homes, then they can actually dispatch that request in real time. And through that, because you as a homeowner or business owner made that investment, they're willing to actually give you a transaction for having that piece in place and allowing for you to benefit financially for helping contribute to the overall solution that's at hand. But yeah, that's a high level conversation of how that all breaks out.
Thank you. That was a really good condensed down version to just at least know that's out there, because so many people I've talked to don't even know it exists. So it's awesome. Yeah. Everyone in the webinar, go look into that, get familiar with it, because that is the future. So I'll ask some of the questions that are here in the chat. They're really good. We have a few minutes. So
hey, Lily,
maybe
can I just make one more comment on that last question? Yeah,
yes.
I think this is really important because like part of the question you asked, you said, are we at the point where every residential installer needs to take batteries seriously? The answer is yes, right? I think collectively, if you look at a lot of the disruption we've seen in the industry, there is a big part of this that is tied directly to NEM 3.0 and companies not being adequately ready and understanding batteries. And that can be from a sales standpoint to an installation standpoint to the whole gamut. And we as an industry need more events like this. And as an industry, we need to create the education and get everybody on board because we are going to continue to see areas, companies, and people in the industry get caught flat-footed if we don't get up to speed with storage and the impact that it has on everything that we're trying to accomplish.
I 100% agree, Brady. Thank you for bringing that up. I tell people, if you don't think what happened in California is coming to your market, you are just living in fantasy world. It's the fifth largest economy in the world for a reason. Anything that happens here will roll out. We're already seeing it with NEM 3.0. Other places are adopting it. And the batteries are not like, oh, that's a California thing. That's a nationwide thing. Everybody
It
should
actually
offer.
started with the Hawaii thing. So you got to
Exactly.
remember
Hawaii's
is
ahead
that
of us.
this is Hawaii 2.0, and yet people are still getting surprised on what just happened, right? So we've already read 2 books and watched 2 movies, and there's many other shows that are happening and being run at the same time. So welcome to this reality show. Get ready. So
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Hey,
It's been
Lily, to build on what he was saying, and one important point is that if you install battery under IRA Act, it is part of ITC investment tax credit. So it does cover 30%. So I think that's a very important piece. And that battery ITC was included under Inflation Reduction Act. And I think that's a very important. And so it's a great investment. You get your money back. And Chris, you talked about increasing your home value by installing battery or solar system. And so in a few years or so, you get your money back and you get to live in a sort of a energy independence environment. So I think it's a great, way to do it.
Yes, absolutely. I think we have a little bit of time. We have Emily asked, since so much of selling storage is focused on the angle of savings, which is impacted heavily by the utility rates increasing over time, have any of you noticed friction with lenders who often have policies limiting how much of a utility increase can be modeled to a homeowner in proposals, essentially limiting how much savings? I have run into this as a rep because you have to show a savings with certain lenders. So have you seen that in the market, and how do you address it?
typically we've seen the proposal tools looking at a year 1 decision that in turn triggers a decision within that lender for that approval. And so it's fair to say that in this scenario, I'm just going to call it as it is. A lot of times where storage is applied in a market that's not showing savings, you need to look at the overall economics that are being proposed. It's not a limiter adding storage for the majority of the markets in the United States. It's a limit of how the project is approached. And so I would challenge you to sit down, because the demand is there. The customers are asking the questions that we talked about earlier, and see how can you financially run your business as an independent contractor, as a sales organization, as an EPC, as a lender, making sure they can get that capital deployed, because they also have commitments on that side as well, and seeing what the longevity of this industry looks like. Because a lot of times you're pricing yourself out of the opportunity. And so it's not in all cases, but I wanted to go ahead and bring that up, that it's okay to look for consistency than one big pop. And so go back, go to the drawing board. How do you run your business? And then ultimately that's going to create a barrier of entry for the consumer, which allows you to cast a wider net, which makes up for the volume gap you thought you lost, which also ultimately opens up referral bases and all the compounding effects that are for the positives. I say that and challenging the industry with that comment.
That's an awesome point. And I was thinking the same. It's going to come down to pricing, right? How you're pricing it. So Dennis asks, and I see Rebecca, if I could just ask this one more question. With solar companies, we're seeing this across the nation, and I'm glad someone answered that. With the solar, so many companies going out of business, and the way that the whole industry is shifting, how do you see it went away from the open questions, but how do you see that affecting batteries sales because of the warranties? Like, people are like, with so many companies going out of business, how do I know you're going to be around? That's a really good question.
Yeah, I'll take that. I represent Q cells, and one of the narrative and strategic position that we're taking is that we are committed for a long haul, and Q cells walk the walk, talk the talk. We committed to invest here in the United States close to $3 billion, and we are building a new factory in Carsville, Georgia, that's going to open this year. And so by committing to stay in the United States and making that expenditures. We have skins in the game, and we like to have that return in our investments. The fact that we've invested over several $1 billion in both in supply chain managed factories and so forth, we're going to be here for a long term. And I think that's making a statement to stakeholders that we're not going to walk away from this just because the environment has changed. And also we are broadening our product portfolio, meaning that we're offering our PV modules, we're also offering energy storage system, our financing through our sister company, Enfin, and we're trying to create value propositions. So if you partner with Q Cells under one company, one guarantor, then there are a number of synergistic streamlining with the communications and warranty and so forth that will help their customers. And I think that's one of the narrative that we've been really pushing for, and we've committed to it. And I think that has really resonate well with our customers and stakeholders.
Awesome. That was a great response. That's a good way to be ready.
I'll build on quickly. So first of all, thanks for the question. And it has been a rough year for the industry, and it's never easy to see partners struggling, customers struggling. And thank you for bringing that up. I strongly optimistic that we've seen the bottom of it, and we are gradually regaining the growth trajectory. Exciting times ahead. Authentically very optimistic. Now, when it comes to making the decision and the fact that batteries are an expensive asset and a long-lasting asset, I think it underlines the importance in choosing vendors. And I'm not going to push SolarEdge too strongly here, but it's about choosing vendors that are here to stay, vendors that has long trajectory of serving the market, that has the capacity to support, even if the installers are no longer available. It is important to choose technologies that are widely accepted and has the track record of being serviceable across many years. And then not specifically the angle that was asked, but I do want to make another point. For installers and for installation companies, and even for reps in some cases, storage represents a terrific opportunity for new business, even when the industry is slowing down, because now you have the capacity to go and retrofit storage systems and to upgrade assets that were deployed in the past. So there are opportunities that storage opens. And then if we look into the future and the expanding needs of households, be it EV charging, be it electrified heating and cooling and what have you, having storage in the mix allows for continued business, which will allow us as an industry to have more resilience. I'm getting at it from an industry perspective, even when the macroeconomics slows down the growth trajectory.
Absolutely. Great points. It is actually a selling position in this downward market that's coming back. But thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time today to provide so much value to the solar community. Thank you, Enerflo, for hosting this. I can't wait to keep watching these and see the industry evolve together, what it's called. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Lily.
Thank
you so much. Great discussion. Appreciate you all joining. Thank you, Lily, for moderating. This was great, and looking forward to seeing you back next year.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Cheers.
again.
Appreciate it.